Yo, JD here, Limitless, and as you can see, we are not back on F1 2020. This is something that's going to be looking very unusual to a lot of people, unless you've been on my channel since the very beginning. This is F1 2013 at the Nürburgring, AOR Season 8, and this video was recorded on July 2014, I believe. So 6 years ago, over 6 years ago, when I first did this video, and back then here, this is very nostalgic to me because these were probably among one of my favourite racing days. Although I absolutely do love the F1 2020 game and how it feels and how I'm performing on it, I feel almost at my best I've ever been right now. But back here, this is when I probably just had the most fun playing the game, and I wasn't using a wheel at this time, and you can see by the track limits. We'll go into describing the game in a second, but I was using the controller, and I'd say at this stage here I was probably at my peak in terms of pad hack abilities. But I did have a nemesis. I had Matty G, or ex-Matty G, otherwise known as Matthew Gallagher, presenter of WTF1 now. And me and him have been friends for a very long time, since F1 2012, or round about 8 years. But when we raced together online, we had a very much of a hate-love relationship, because for me, he was the person who motivated me to get into league racing, because I looked at him. He was at the top of the food chain, really, in terms of being on the pad, and I really aspired to be as quick as him. But then once I started to get to his level, we ended up having quite a few heated battles on and off track as well, which I'm sure he can confirm. And you can see here, around Nürburgring, we're about a 10th off him, because on his day, or not on his day, but he was extremely talented, considering how much he played the game. Admittedly, at this time, I played a lot more than him, but he was just so good at clutching up when it mattered, and when it came to race pace, kind of like how I'm now, he was just, I wouldn't say he had more pace than me, but he was definitely more consistent than me at this point in the game. So Tiro Rosberg on pole, the man who was the fastest on the wheel at this time, Noble 2909, pretty much retired from league racing the season before this. So now it was the door open to win my first AOR championship, and that's what me and Matty G are fighting so hard, because at this point I think we're pretty much level on points. So we've got 5 fights here. Whoever wins this race is going to take the lead in the championship to myself and my teammates. We get a decent start. We've got Broziak, another name from the past here, Season 9 champion, as we make a little bit of contact with the Marussia of TRL Rosberg. We're going through this turn 1 at Nürburgring. I absolutely love this track. This was probably one of my favourite tracks to race at the game. And you look how wide the track is. That was something that always caught me off guard, just how wide this track is. And you can say we've made up a position, but Matty G, with the pad start, the pad's normally always got a better start than the wheel, is off into the distance. And I remember this race like it was yesterday. It's scary how time flies. And now at this point in my life, I was at university. I think it was my second or third year at university. I was on the controller. I wasn't streaming. I think I had less than 1,000 subscribers at this time. I have no idea, but I didn't really have any somewhat of a following at all. The only kind of following I had was I feel like I was known as a good driver in league racing and probably one of the best players on the pad, but that was it. I don't think I even had Twitter at this time. So this really is throwing back the years here, and it really makes me smile to look at this, because I just know how intense this was. And to be honest, me as a person now, I have the same passion for league racing now as I did back then, and that's something that makes me really happy. And you can see here, Matty G, for me at this time, he was someone I put on a pedestal, who's obviously he's gone on to achieve very big things now as well, but he was the man to beat for me, and he was the man I wanted to dethroned from being the best on the game. That's what I was trying to achieve. And you can see track limits. There were no strict rules back in these days. It was pretty much just one corner cutting rule only, and you could pretty much almost do anything you like. Because you can see when I come out the pit lane later in this race, I go across the right line, and it's pretty much impossible to get a penalty on this game. And that's the one good thing about the new games, is that it's a lot more strict in the corner cutting, but it can often be quite inconsistent. But here, the thing I loved about racing in this game is, it wasn't perfect, but it was just, you just had to race as hard as you can. It was just a pure racing game, really. And, the game's now a lot more realistic. This was a lot more arcade, but don't be fooled. No, and Racing will notice this here. It was extremely hard to get to a very, very good level. And I remember this day, a lot of people in this game used to run 1-1 wings, 2-1 wings. I ran a very different setup, courtesy of Tyrrell Martin on this day, who gave me a 3-4 wing setup. I can remember it. I can remember it so clearly. At the start of the stint, I knew he was going to be very, very fast. But then once the tyres go off, I knew I would be so much faster than him. And you can see we set the fastest lap of the race as well. So I knew towards the end of the stint, that's when I'd be so much faster, because tyre wear was just so important on this game. And another thing, with these 50% races, often it was a 2-stop race, sometimes even 3 stops. I think at Malaysia, it was like a 3-stop race. So every 5 to 6 laps, you had to stop. So it always made it so much more intense, really, to be honest. It just made it so challenging, and you couldn't really save the tyres that well. It only depended on what wings you ran. But if you ran 3-4, you'd be very slow at the start of the stint, but then if you could keep it together, then you'd be right there. And that's exactly what's happening here. His tyres are starting to go off now, and I'm starting to come into my own. And again, this race was so important in the Nürburgring, because whoever won this race would then have a foot's lead in this championship. And no, Matty G had never won AOR championship, because it always used to be Noble 2909, who again, one of the best drivers I've ever gone against. No, with him retiring, pretty much opening the door to a new champion. No, myself and Matty G, we wanted to be the first people to take that crown from him, and that's why this rivalry was just so intense. And now you can see he's going under pressure, so he's defending really hard going into turn 1. That makes him go in deep. We try and go around the outside, and just with the pure traction I have right now, this is exactly what I wanted. And we're going to have to be making 2 stops during this race. So my plan here was to try and put as much of a gap as I could between myself and him, because on this game, kind of like what I still do to this day, I always like going for a bit of an overcut, because psychologically you have the better tyres. And with this setup as well, I knew that if I could even get ahead of him on this overcut, I knew the race was pretty much over, as we're just clunking these curbs, absolutely sending it over these curbs like a go-kart. And you can see now he's making his first pit stop, because it's very touch and go to make the 2-stop work from the end of lap 4. So yeah, my strategy was to just try and just get ahead of him after my pit stop towards the end of the race. I knew at the beginning of the race he'd probably get a big undercut on me, but that was my plan, to try and just gradually increase that gap as much as I could, because if I could go out ahead of him, I felt I had this race in the bag here. So we go into the pits at the end of next lap. Tyrrell Rosberg follows me in, but we are going to see a wild X-Matty G. As we go out the pits here, you can see my teammate then cruises past me once again. So the undercut is semi-powerful, good second and a bit. And you can see crossing the white line, nothing happens there. No, that's the one criticism I had this game. The track limits really weren't strict at all. But at the same time, it made it so, it was just the same for everyone, to be honest. You can see here again, or we didn't do it then, or maybe on this corner. No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't strict, but at least it was the same for everyone, and everyone knew what you really could do or couldn't get away with. So you can see over the next couple of laps, we send it again over that curb, but we catch him very quickly, And at this point, I was just feeling super, super confident. But we do have Tiro Rosberg not too far behind, but we do set the fastest lap once again. So making very good inroads into this turn one. Does he defend? He's not going to defend. And I knew that was probably going to be a little bit too far. Almost pushing him. Literally am pushing him around this corner. So the stints are about 5 to 6 laps each time. So I need to get past him as soon as I possibly can. But coming through here, trying to get a good exit, and again, on 2020, that would probably be a slam dunk penalty. But a couple of laps later, we weren't able to get past him. Or I think I'm just trying to be a little bit more patient and stuff. But you can see we don't have that much data on board. We've got a 1 lap of fuel going back to optimal, and you'll be able to see the tyre wear indicator earlier. There's no percentages, so you really have to kind of guess. And go into here, really getting quite close to him. He goes a little bit out wide, so he's starting to feel pressure now, and we get an extremely good run and go into chicane, one of the hardest corners on this game. So going to here, going to the right hand side just to get the racing line for the chicane, and we outbrake him. We're just about to get done kissing this, mounting that a little bit, and almost spinning out on the exit, but we get that move done, and this is exactly what we need to do. But coming across here, let's see, we've got a nice little buffer to him, setting another green lap here and making sure we look after the fuel as well. And the point in this strategy is just to try and put as big a gap as possible. So even if he goes in earlier, he's hardly going to come out that much ahead of me. And this is the strategy that I was just looking to adopt the whole thing. So you can see through here, starting to pull away a little bit now, deciding not to go into the pits. But I think Matty G does go into the pits on this lap here. I don't think it's quite hard to see, but going across the line here, it says Matty G is behind me, but you can see that tyre wear indicator. That is all you got on 2013. Just the colour grading to know when it was going to pop. No percentages or anything at all. But I think Matty G has, in fact, gone into the pictures because there were a few desync and glitches on this game. So the next lap, I go into the pits once again. Rosberg, we've managed to put a little gap on Rosberg as well, because I think on this game, I think the wheel was the faster device overall, but the pad had a little bit better tyre wear and traction, so pretty similar to what it is nowadays as well. So making another pit stop, I think we're going to have to make 3 pit stops actually, in fact, remembering from this race. So coming up here again, I would say we were a little bit closer, but he's still got a decent undercut. So again, back to scenario 1. Caught up to him reasonably quickly, setting another quickest lap of the race in the meantime. And it's just the case again of just getting past him as soon as I can. And then just trying to build as big a gap as I can as well. So going for these long sweeping corners. Absolutely love these. And I'm probably releasing this video after the GP, so hopefully you enjoyed the GP. Trying to get a good exit coming off here again, and slipstream wasn't particularly powerful in this game. It's really just the DRS that was pretty powerful. You can see we've got the KERS deployment, which is kind of like the overtake button we have now pretty much, and that was a lot of fun to use as well. So we've got a bit of a buffer to Rosberg behind me, who I think we have slightly better pace than. But now I'm just trying to size up my teammate and just pick for the right opportunities. Going up through here, not using any KERS whatsoever, and he might be putting it into lean because we are gaining quite a bit of time. Going through here, just trying to be as close as I possibly can, being super close, not going down the inside here, make him defend a little bit, and now we got the absolute perfect run. So let's see what we do this time. We try and go to the right side, being blocked off ever so slightly, so we're going to go side by side going to. We let him have this corner just so we can try and get a better exit, which we do get a very good exit. He decides not to pit because it's going to be one more pit stop left, and then that's it. Then coming off this corner, using the remaining part of my KERS, not putting it into rich, leaving it in standard because fuel is a little bit borderline, and we don't think we're going to be close enough. So no, I'm not going to go for a move on this occasion. It's very difficult going through here, trying to be as wide as I can. And let's see how much of a good run I get. Trying to go for a little bit off the switchback. Not going to go down the inside here. Despite how wide, look how wide this corner is. This corner is so wide. I wish Codemasters, you please introduce this on the next game or DLC. That would be absolutely insane. But again, it's becoming quite a fierce battle now, as Rosberg is actually starting to catch up ever so slightly, but he gets a very poor run coming off his corner, going into the bottom corner. We're going to go side by side, going down into here. He leaves me room on the entry, side by side into here. Do we get the move done? Trying to go up the hill using the remaining part of my curves, and with the tyre wear, the setup, and the better traction, we get that move done. But it is not over with yet, because we still have the DRS going down into this final chicane. So trying to be as fast as I can. These long sweeping corners, absolutely love this. And we get a pretty decent exit off here, using a remaining, or leaving a little bit of curves on the table here. I don't think he's going to be close enough going to chicane, because look how narrow and bumpy this is. It's absolutely insane. And coming out through here, he is not going to pit yet, I believe, because you really need to be doing about 8 laps on these prime tyres and getting a good launch off this corner, setting another green lap. And with the curves use, I don't think he's going to be a little bit close enough, but he is gaining very, very quickly. He was thinking about going down the inside, but decides to think a little bit better of it. And I thought in my mind at this point, no, this is job done. Try and pull out a second or as big advantage as possible for the pit stops. And even if he gets ahead of me, I was quite confident in the last stint that I could re-pass him again. But moving towards the end of lap 20, you can see we've already pulled out a pretty decent gap already. And coming through this corner, we go on the gravel a little bit, almost losing the car. And that gives him an absolutely insane run. And he re-passes me for the lead of this race. So the strategy was going absolutely perfectly. And I knew he couldn't really pit this up. So if I didn't make that mistake, I think we could have had almost a 2-second lead going in, and I think we would have just maintained our position coming out of the pit. So now this is really royally screwed up my strategy. So he's going very defensive because he knows how important this is. And going into here, instead of letting him have the corner, I go around the outside, making a little bit of contact, but I get the inside for the left-hander, and we managed to retake the lead here, and that was absolutely crucial once again. But the thing is now, he's probably going to pit this lap, and I was thinking to myself, do I pit this lap? Because the tyres will be so bad at the end of this stint. So I didn't want to suffer with that. So I decided to continue for another lap. I decided to let him have this because I just believed that I would be able to get him with a couple of laps to go and pull that gap. And I knew there'd probably be nothing he could do. So I'm going to go into the pits in this lap. Rosberg actually pitted the lap before me as well. And now this is my final pit stop of the race. 3 pit stops we made in this race. Now compared to league racing nowadays, you only do 1 stop. Like, there isn't any track you really do a 2 stop on. So no, these days was very different, but very exciting in my opinion. And this time, as we go across the right line again, I think this is the biggest gap that he has had coming out of the pit so far. So we're going to see what this gap is. We've got 7 laps of this race to go, but I knew towards the end of the stint he would really start to struggle here. So coming through this long right hand corner, very tricky to get right here. And no assists on these cars were not easy, despite it being quite arcadey. As you can see, it's a 2.6 second gap here. So we skip on to lap 25. Going through this sector now, we've brought down the gap by quite a lot. So the tyres are really starting to work again. But up ahead, looks like there's a few little issues as you go into this corner here. He is actually desinking quite a bit, but he's gone off into the gravel trap. And I can confirm that he was having connection issues, and that has allowed me to retake the lead. Although we were closing very quickly, it was certainly disappointing, and I knew how gutted he would be at that. But coming through here, you can see lost connection to X Mally G, which really spoiled a very entertaining fight towards the end of this race. But with the setup and pace and the strategy, I felt confident that I could get him at the end. But that has led me to win this race, this historic race, this nostalgic race round the Nürburgring in AOR Season 8 6 years ago. And that actually gave me the lead of the championship at the time. I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know if you want me to commentate on older league racing videos, some of my favourite ones I've ever done in the past. I really enjoyed blasting back to the past. Thank you so much for supporting my channel, and I will catch you soon. Peace.